So what we could do is to probably evolve certain conditions around us. Okay, we could evolve the way we design products, applications, the way we test, the way we adopt technology, the way we evolve legislation, the structure that we have with regards to how we hurt the hackers, how we hack the hackers, okay? How do we improve human behavior, how do we improve competencies. These are some of the opportunities that we would have, that the threat brings to the table. Okay, I see threats as opportunities for us to become more innovative. So, so that's the background. Okay, so I'm going to put together an overview. Okay, so my objective is at the end of this session, next 20 minutes, I want to create a framework that we all understand, with which we can build resiliency, into our IT ecosystem. Okay. You should also understand the motivations, okay, that motivations that exist, on why we should build resiliency, right? So, what I want to talk a little bit about is that resiliency is the centerpiece. I would like to go ahead and define what resiliency is. Okay, what are some of the attributes with which we can develop resiliency? I definitely want to touch upon the changed landscape. Okay, there are threats and trends. IT ecosystem is all about how we can assure information. Okay, information is created. We could use it for business intelligence. It can also be stolen. It can be manipulated. So we definitely want to see how we can improve the endpoint resiliency, application resiliency, network resiliency, so that we achieve that information assurance. Okay. So I want to bring all of us on the same page. So we finally go to a framework and see how we can increase or enhance the security posture of our IT infrastructure. This applies to the government, applies to the enterprises. It in fact applies to the network equipment manufacturers who put in their content-aware devices in the IT ecosystem. This is how Wikipedia defines resiliency as, okay? The ability to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and evolve in the face of adverse conditions, stresses, or attacks. A couple of points here. Anticipation is about how we battle test our applications, endpoint, it could be servers, it could be network elements. How are we battle testing our infrastructure before we put it into production? Because we don't want to finger point, we don't want to increase the cost of remediation later, we don't want to over provision because we have capex issues. We don't want to under provision or over provision. We don't want to do the guesswork. Right? So what we want to do is to battle test the application and the infrastructure prior to deployment. So that is the anticipation, in anticipation of threats, in anticipation of increased volume of traffic. Okay. So once we do that, it helps us withstand in a production real-time environment. And recovering from an evolution or evolving in the face of adverse conditions, what it means is it brings in the human element. Okay, it's important to raise questions at this point of time. Does our ID folks, do they have the right kind of competencies to defend the territory and the conditions of attack? Do they understand information assurance? Do they understand the concept of information operations? See, the war cannot be won. Of course, we're not going to win the war, but we can reduce the impact of threats. But you typically can't do that just by being defensive. We need to have offensive operations as well. So, do we have the right kind of staff with the right kind of competencies to defend as well as to offend? Do they understand mission assurance? These are some of the questions that we need to raise in terms of modeling human behavior within our environment. Okay, end users as well as IT staff. Okay. So resiliency has certain attributes like under conditions of instability, under conditions of security attacks, under conditions of high load of traffic, does our applications, are they available to us, and do they perform under certain conditions? What is the leeway that we have so that we can recover? Okay, so these are some of the aspects. For example, instability. So we know that when we put in the ID infrastructure, we know there's a lot of impairments. So how does the application behave in terms of impairments? Under conditions of security threats, and this could be malware attacks, it could be attacks not just coming in like a vanilla, but they are disguised. A lot of evasions that happens, they come under evasions. And what about distributed denial of service? Distributed denial of service, which is typically kind of keeping your content-aware devices very busy. I would probably go ahead and call that as a foreplay for an actual attack to happen. Okay, so it's a subterfuge, it's a deceit, right? So, and so the idea is to kind of, that's something that we need to brain tattoo. Okay? Resiliency has to be validated continuously in step with change. If we measure resiliency at this point of time, tomorrow we are not sure whether we are resilient because things are changing. Things are changing within our environment. Things are changing outside our environment. Okay, inside our environment, we bring in a lot of changes in terms of applications. We add network infrastructure. There are so many different changes. Okay, and we'll definitely look at the change next slide. And in terms of external changes, now there are different types of threats. Threats are changing. The same signature of the malwares is changing with time. So resiliency has to be measured, and it has to be measured continuously. Okay, so with that, it's very important to go ahead and look at what changes. So I'm going to showcase a couple of trends here, the significant ones. Cloud adoption, okay, it's very good. Okay, it brings down, it shifts from capex to opex, right? So it is good, and we don't have to retain some of the really expert, IT staff with us because we are just offloading them to a service provider. Okay, so of course there are certain questions in terms of who's accountable if there is a data theft. Okay. Virtualization is very good. It brings down the cost. It's very quick to market. There's a lot of cost efficiencies, but the impact that it brings is it's very difficult to see what's going on. When it's difficult to see what's going on, it's very difficult to monitor. What we don't see, we cannot monitor, and monitoring and visibility is very essential for resiliency. Bring your own device, right? It's fantastic. Okay, so it improves flexibility. It improves the productivity, a lot of convenience in terms of anywhere, anytime, any device access. The issue is that we bring the device in and out of the controlled environment. That's the issue. It is like bringing the threads through the front door. Okay. So what is the natural extension of a bring your own device is bring your own applications. At any point of time, in our smartphones, there are like about 60 active applications that are resident in our smartphones. And there's a lot of rapid development that's going on. And the smartphone environments, I feel, it's going to be a menace, and that's going to be a huge threat in the coming days because the environment is not all that mature or secure. It's a very permissive environment. It's a very permissive environment. Okay? So that's where the danger is. So overall, there's a lot of flexibility, all this to be embraced, productivity, and all this have to be embraced. There has to be good governance, there has to be good policy, There has to be good framework. We need to see the vulnerability of the environments has to, it has to reduce. So there are threats. The threat surface increases with the adoption of these trends. Internet adoptions. Okay, today we have roughly about 7 billion people, and about 35% of the folks have embraced internet today, which is about 2.75 to 3 billion people have embraced internet. Okay? And this is growing at a rate of about 8%. Okay? Of course, it's different in different countries. Probably in India, the penetration is just about 26%. In China, it's about 44%. In the US, it's about 78%, the internet penetration. Right? So, but overall, the world average is about it's about 35%. Okay, and it's growing at about 8%. So, so definitely have a lot of users in the internet now. Another trend is the Internet of Things. Okay, about 20 years back when I graduated, we're talking about Internet of Systems. We're connecting systems together. And about a decade back, we're talking about Internet of People, social media, and apps and stuff like that. Right? Now, we want to put our probes everywhere. We want to kind of capture information right at the point of transactions. Right? We want to derive or cull out a lot of business intelligence from data. Okay? So it's good. All this is fantastic. So which means I'm talking about putting in a chip in the code and automatically it adjusts the temperature, right? Or putting a chip in my body and it gives me different stats and it recommends me a few actions that I need to be going to the doctor or my condition is not good, aspects of that nature. So Internet of Things is going to create an explosion of information. And this information is sensitive, it's good for business intelligence, but it can also be stolen and misused. Okay? So there's going to be explosion of information, there's going to be explosion of traffic. Device growth, 7 billion people, but 10 billion devices on the internet. About 80% of it is wired and 20% of it is wireless. Okay? So application growth is fantastic. It's growing and it's growing faster. We're talking about embracing agility, right? The issue is I still don't believe as a practitioner, I still don't believe we are yet there in terms of how we pick up requirements. We mostly talk about functional requirements. We are talking about non-functional requirements when we are developing a software, right? So in non-functional requirements, we talk about usability. There's some maturity in usability, right? So, but we talk about performance. Yes, we understand performance, but we don't understand the security aspect of developing a software. What we should not be doing, what information we should not be logging. When we throw an exception for debugging, do I throw username, passwords, credit card informations, other informations? What we log, what we show us. So, I think we need to strengthen the way in which we gather requirements, we design the requirements, our review processes, all that has to improve. If our conditions are not right, we create situations for vulnerability that can be exploited. I don't have to show statistics here. This is truth. This is cyber espionage is truth. There are different motivations, okay? For strengthening the posture in terms of either at the state level or for economic benefits or for a philosophy, what we stand for, activism, right? And so overall, there are a lot of things that's going on. There's explosion of traffic. The trends are good, but it does increase the threat surface. And there are motivated players there who would like to steal something. So under these conditions of changes or trends and threats, it's extremely important for all of us to define what the security profile of our organization is. Okay? We could be in any business. We could be in the business of defending a country. We could be in the business of creating value to our stakeholders. Whatever be it, it's very important to kind of define the risk profile And in simple ways, I would say risk profile is if you hold the materiality, which means if you know what asset you're holding, and if there are some motivated folks around who want that asset from you, and if your defenses are weak, then you have a very high risk profile. Okay, so this is extremely important. I don't think I have explained that more. Okay, so now let's look at, so we've seen resiliency and the change, and now we should map it to the IT ecosystem. Okay, this is how I depict an IT ecosystem. There's a data center, and the data center is where our data is going to reside, applications are going to reside, they're going to reside in servers, in application servers, database servers. There's going to be caching mechanism to improve. There's a lot of endpoints there, and that's the data center part. The next is the network infrastructure, where you have this connectivity, switching, routing, load balancing, all these things going on. And then the security infrastructure. I'm going to spend a little more time here. So security today is not just about antivirus, anti-spam, or running the AAA services, authorizing, accounting, authentication, aspects of that nature, and putting probably a firewall in the perimeter. Okay? It's not about that today. Today, we have content-aware devices, very intelligent devices, which can do deep packet inspection across the layers of the network, okay, right up to the application layer. So this could be like your web application firewall, or it could be unified threat management devices, or next generation firewall, you name it. So and these devices, they need to look at all the traffic. Okay, they cannot be partial. They cannot be partial. They need to look at all the traffic, and then they need to decide whether to let it go. Should we let the traffic flow from untrusted domain to trusted domain? Should they log an event? It also does some behavioral analysis to find out whether that particular event is part of a bigger attack. Okay, so they do a lot of different things, and when the volume of traffic grows, when the threat grows, typically it slows that down. So it's very important to have the right content-aware devices that can perform under different conditions. Okay, and then what's important is we'll talk a little bit about visibility. Okay, what we don't see, we cannot monitor. It's very important to understand that we need to understand the traffic patterns. We need to push the traffic into our forensic data recorders. We need to optimize the network monitorings, like network performance monitors, application performance monitors. All this stuff is essential for compliance sake, for strengthening our defenses. Okay, visibility is very key. Okay, so that's what I'll leave you at that. And then intelligence is at another portion. Okay, intelligence. We can derive intelligence from within the network and from outside the network. Situational awareness is extremely important for defending our territory. Situational awareness. And we create that from inside our network and outside our network. Okay, inside there are a lot of event loggers. Okay, so the applications are throwing some information. The security infrastructure is throwing some information. The network infrastructure is throwing some information. We should be able to correlate that with some of the intelligence that we subscribe to, like the reputation information from outside, like the threat information from outside. What are the new applications that's floating in our network? We should be able to know, right? So we definitely need to subscribe to intelligence from inside and outside. Okay. So, and then the next layer is the correlation. Now that we have visibility and we know how to derive intelligence, it's important to correlate. So visibility and the context is important to achieve that control on the network and to improve the security defenses. Okay, I have about 5 minutes to go and 2 slides. So what it means is there are so many elements to the IT ecosystem, and we want to battle test all the elements. What are the elements that was listed? Content-aware devices, network monitoring devices, the applications, the endpoints. We want to kind of stress all those in real-world conditions, so there is no weakness in the environment in our security infrastructure. Okay. So we could have the best of the defenses, and it could be resilient now, but if we don't have a continuous way of security testing and assessment, our defenses will fail. It's very important to understand that. Now that we looked at the ID ecosystem, this is the framework that I want you folks to know. Resiliency in modern threat of war. We've been working with the Department of Defense in the US for quite a while, and we have set up some of these frameworks, and we also work with our solutions with some of the defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems, with Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, so many folks, and then they all, and some of the top enterprises, they have this framework. I'm just going to introduce that. They all have set up something called a cyber range. It's a very controlled environment under which you can really battle test your applications and infrastructure. Okay? You can simulate internet traffic, not just traffic but threats as well. You can drive in the malwares. You can drive in malwares with evasions. You can bring in bots, Stuxnet. You can actually bring in Stuxnet into that environment. Okay, the kind of bots, right? Any new malwares you bring in. So, and then you validate it. You continuously do it because you know that things are changing. Subscribe to application and security intelligence or actionable intelligence. You use the same cyber range to train the IT folks on information assurance, information operations, and mission assurance, right? And then teach them how to defend and how to attack, as well as evolve your processes and guidelines. And it is a continuous process. Okay. So this is a simple framework, but it's an effective framework. Okay. So the emphasis that I bring in is that we need to test, assess, and optimize the infrastructure so that we reduce the cost of remediation. We need visibility into the network, so we bring in all the needed elements that offers you visibility. And we need to subscribe to actionable insight, intelligence from inside your network, intelligence from outside, right? So, and we use that to strengthen our defenses, to train our folks on information assurance, on information operations, and mission assurance. Okay? So, the visibility, context, and control, they're key to strengthening our defenses. So, this is a very high-level summary, I guess. We are right there on the mark. And so because cybersecurity is a big topic, and I had to pick up a few vital few so that it's useful. And so we have a lot of white papers, very elaborate white papers on all of these things, including big data. We have it at the booth. We have also uploaded it in the resource center. And so please feel free to drop by. And thank you for being a good audience. We also have at the booth, we have a lucky draw today. We got a permission from the gambling.
We got the permit from
the Gambling Association. Yeah. So last night we couldn't advertise it earlier. So we put the board there today.
What can you win today?
I'm sorry?
What can you win?
What could you win? You could win a very fancy watch, wristwatch.
It's a smartwatch.
It's a smartwatch, which
smartphone.
Yeah, it should sync in with. Yeah.
You can have 5 more minutes speaking if I can win the lucky draw.